this is the Prime Minister will take the UK out of the European Union, and that's an historic moment. And I think she's got the determination and the grit to actually do that for the UK.
The European referendum campaign and vote represents a mandate in itself, obviously to deliver Brexit, but to tackle what we heard in that campaign, real concerns about the model of growth, about powerlessness, about people's feeling of alienation from globalization. And that is part of what our new team at Number 10 is determined to make sure we address and tackle, as well as delivering Brexit and making a success of it.
I think Theresa May's time in office is bound to be dominated by the European Union, but the important thing she's got to do is to try and define herself apart from that question. So she's got to find policy questions which are hers.
It's very early days. On the one hand, you might say that her approach to Brexit has suggested she has thought through the implications. On the other hand, you might argue that something like the introduction of new grammar schools would suggest that she hasn't taken the time to think through all of the implications and weigh up all the evidence about the appropriateness of that policy.
The first thing she's tried to do is define herself as an education Prime Minister. She's made a big speech about meritocracy. It's a really good theme. I'm looking forward to seeing what else she's got to say on it. I think grammar schools are a red herring. I think there are 27,000 schools in the country at the moment. A tiny fraction of them are ever going to become grammar schools. It is immaterial to life chances. It really obsesses the tribal conservatives amongst them, but it doesn't really matter in educational terms.
I think the guiding idea is that we face big challenges, that globalization is profoundly challenging to a lot of the traditional ways that we've governed our country, the traditional expectation of governments and of companies. And she is determined that we grip it and that we understand the domestic difficulties that people have, this powerlessness that people feel.
The move away from a slavish dedication to austerity is really welcome, because austerity has been demonstrated to be quite a self-defeating policy. And in actual fact, in order to save money in the public sector, we need to be able to invest some more in things like early intervention, in more coherent and joined up policy approaches. If you look at things like the care of the elderly, social care, the impact on A&E, those aren't problems which are going to be solved by cost shunting from one service to another.
The government is showing actually it means business, and we need to build up the competitiveness of the UK to survive in the global market.
All administrations are quite centralised in Britain. They always are. The Prime Minister is going to get the blame for everything, even if they know nothing about it. So they might as well know about it. So her famous desire to read all the briefs is probably a good instinct. She has to, though, of course, be careful, because it can absolutely destroy you. If you worry about everything, if everything gets blocked at the doors of Downing Street, as it did with Gordon Brown, then it's a problem. What she should do, what I advise her to do as a veteran of the Tony Blair administration, is when things become a problem, then focus on them absolutely relentlessly. Centralise them, take them in, sort them out, and then make a big play of the fact that you've sorted it out. But don't try to be across everything all at once, because you can't.
I think at the moment, the administration seems to me to be quite closed. I felt that under the previous administration, whatever its faults, there was quite a lot of engagement with key stakeholders outside the government. But a lot of the key players aren't engaging as we would expect. And I don't know whether they're waiting to take their cue from Theresa May, or whether she won't encourage them to engage and express themselves openly to those people who they need to influence and work with in order to make any policy happen.
We must speak to a much broader constituency of people who wouldn't perhaps expect the Conservative Party naturally to be pursuing their interests, and we need to give them a voice and give them an ear, and that is what our new policy board, the Prime Minister's policy board, is about, broadening that policy contribution so that more people feel that politics is working for them.